Hey there! Here we are nearing the end of the year. Hope you're all taking care of yourselves and doing well. I wanted to share another little nook I made. This one isn't fan art, but I'll be getting back to that soon. If you want to see my inspiration for this, check out my Pinterest board in the description below. I also gave myself a challenge for this one, to use only what I already have, no purchasing. So let's get into it. You might think this is a really small room. You'd be right. I modeled it on the actual dimensions of a room in a Manhattan apartment that was around 6 feet by 15 feet. So this is actually built to 1/24th scale, except for a few things that I eyeballed. After I knew the dimensions I was working with, I cut out the main box and lined 2 walls with a 2mm craft foam. I knew that I wanted a mural on one wall, so I did a lot of research. I ended up creating a really subtle blue gradient on the wall, then painting Not Star Stars in gold on top. I think I'd do this if I were actually creating a nursery. It's interesting by itself, but you could still add wall art or shelving and not feel like it's too busy. The wall with the window I just painted white and cut out a scrap piece of plastic for the window pane. I wanted light to come through, but I didn't really want to see the rest of my room behind it, so I took 1000 grit sandpaper and made little tiny circles until it was frosted. I did a tutorial of this flooring in one of my other videos, so I'm going to keep this short. Please check out my foam tutorial if you're interested. It's made with 2mm craft foam and glued to the cardboard base. I used several different colors of acrylics to give it texture and depth. This cradle was literally the inspiration for the entire nook. Thank you, Pinterest, for feeding my obsession and giving me 5 million ways this has been done. I started out by cutting it in 2mm craft foam. After painstakingly gluing everything together and painting it with a rich brown color, I hated everything about it. Bye! I didn't film much from the redo, sorry, but this time I made it from a sheet of balsa I got on Amazon. As always, link to materials is in the description. This is better. With a little acrylic paint and a lot of water, I stained it a nice, warm, orangey color. And once again, hated it, so I went back to it with white. I drew a couple different designs for this and finally settled on a mid-mod low dresser with these subtle gold rays. If this were a functional piece, the doors would slide so you can open one side at a time. I started off by cutting a box in 2mm craft foam and gluing it together with barge rubber cement. I made angled legs out of Sculpey and glued it all together. No. I didn't even get around to painting it, it just went straight into the scrap pile. I cannibalized the legs though, those could still work. I cut the same pattern out of balsa wood and glued that together instead. I made a pseudo stain with acrylics and a lot of water and got a nice happy warm color. I painted the legs and gave it tiny brass feet. Much better. If you're gonna do a celestial nursery, you've got to have a moon nightlight, right? This is still on my wish list for my normal-sized home. I love the idea of holding something that glows and looks like the moon. I created this in glow-in-the-dark Sculpey and tried doing a wash on it to show the crater textures. It just looked dirty. So the second time's the charm. I made a new moon and didn't paint it. For the stand, I looked at pictures online and saw it was pretty much 3 L-shaped pieces glued together. So I cut these out of Sculpey, baked, painted, and glued. I started out by digging in my yarn pile and found this beautiful wool from Gluschenko.com. The color is Belize, which tells you a lot about the color. It says 6.5 stitches per inch on US 3 needles, but unless I'm making something to wear, I never measure. Shh, don't tell the people who actually knit well. I grabbed my yarn ball and went to watch some Netflix while knitting, and soon I had a cute little blanket, which was way too big and absolutely did not belong in this nook at all. So back to the drawing board. I didn't have any thinner yarn, so I needed to improvise. I grabbed my 20 gauge wire and cut a couple knitting needles. This time I made sure to stay near my nook until I was sure of the size. Ta-da! Much better the second time around, but I'll let you know a secret. This was actually time 4. I experimented twice with different stitches and everything was terrible. I had to really work to get it to drape a little, but it's cute. At first, I wanted to create this chair from IKEA. I made it out of Super Sculpey and was really proud of it. It rocked and everything. However, I set this nook aside for a while, and when I came back to it, the chair wouldn't rock. The Sculpey had flattened under its own weight. I should probably have used a wire armature, but those strips were so thin and it would have been really hard. So, round 2. I tried to create the same chair, but in balsa wood. And no! If I had a laser cutter, this probably would have been awesome, but I have splintery wood and an X-Acto knife. By the time everything was glued together, it was woefully lopsided. Scrap that. Round 3. Literally round this time. I love floor poofs, so let's just do that. I found some leather scrap I had from an old costume and cut 2 circles and a long rectangle. I stuffed it with cotton balls and glued them together with super glue. Then I mixed up some off-white paint to create the design. This works. These are so easy and are such a space saver. In a room this small, shelves on the walls could easily bash heads, so the corner is the perfect place. I cut little squares from the balsa wood and cut them in half again to make right triangles. After painting them white, I superglued them to the walls. Even if I measured, things went funny, and there was a lot of internal screaming as I realized I couldn't take them off without ruining the mural. So let's just hide the weirdness with some decor. If you know me personally, you know I'm an avid houseplant enthusiast. I couldn't create this room without adding at least one piece of greenery. So I started off making a little pot and painting it black and gold. You're not really gonna see the pot in the finished nook, but I like the style. Then I cut 26 gauge wires and baked them into a plug that will sit in the pot and painted them green. Now comes the fun part. I put on a new TV show and started making itty bitty green balls of Sculpey. Once they were baked, I used tiny dabs of superglue and painstakingly tweezed the balls in place. Not a sentence I ever thought I would say, but here we are. I was serious when I said I didn't want to buy anything for this new nook. To stick it in place on the shelf without ruining the paint, I grabbed some plant-related mail and peeled off the sticky stuff. That will give it a little more stability and the pearls won't fall off the shelf whenever I bump the table. I could get really fancy with the books, but nah, they're just gonna be glued together and on a shelf anyway. So I cut a few rectangles of various sizes, baked them, carved a couple little lines to simulate pages, rounded the spine, and painted them white. Then I picked a couple cute colors and painted the covers. The rug was another exercise in creativity. I didn't want to buy anything, so I wandered around the apartment a little. I found a blanket I haven't finished yet with some fluffy yarn and stole some from where I changed colors. I glued this down to 2mm foam that I cut to look like a sheepskin rug. You can see where the yarn curls around, but that's okay. It still looks like something I'd want to put my feet on. For the lamp, I wanted to do one of those mid-mod arc lamps. I love mid-mod if you couldn't tell already. I started by finding a little glass terrarium thingy that doesn't have any plants at the moment and used that as a base to get a curve for the shade. Glass is awesome because you can bake it and the clay won't collapse when it gets warm. I made a thick base since it has to balance the weight of the shade and cut a piece of wire for the arc. Yep, just eyeballed that one. Once they were baked, I painted them white and left a lot of brush texture, then mixed up some gold and bronze paints and kept layering until it looked cool. Some super glue, and this is done. So this is the final look. I'm pretty happy with it now, in spite of having to redo almost everything at least once. You may have noticed it's also not really a Nook, and that's fine. Also, it has no lights. Again, it's cute. If you want to see my inspiration board, I linked my Pinterest board in the description below. Let me know what you think. I always love reading your comments, and if there's anything you see in here that you'd like me to make a tutorial for, just let me know. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.